All right, welcome everybody. This is the first ever Black Girlfriend Magic talk show. Today's topic is generational wealth deficit. We're really going to talk about, since it's Black History Month, we thought it would be really great to start with history's effects on us, people of color in our community, how we haven't been able to build generational wealth. On today's panel, we have our founder and executive director, Brandy Baxter, which will be popping on in just a minute. We have Michelle Jackson, Teri Ijeoma, and Valencia, I can't see your last name.
Morton.
All right. So my name is Tina Marie. I will be moderating and checking the comments, but I will be popping off so Brandy can jump on into this conversation now.
Hey, everybody. Happy to be here. Really excited about tonight. Ready to get our conversation going. So I think there's a little bit of a delay. Tina's talking, and she's actually supposed to be moderating our conversation tonight. So what we're gonna do is get started with a little bit of some introductions to see how everyone is doing and introduce ourselves to the audience, okay? So I'm also watching it on my laptop, so if you see me glancing down, that's what's going on too, trying to just make sure we keep all the technology happy tonight. So let's go ahead and introduce our panel. We'll start with, we'll start with you, Michelle, since you had us cracking up before we came on live.
I will keep those comments.
Yeah,
I will keep
you
those
can keep those comments to yourself, but go right ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you guys so much for having me on this panel and for this discussion. My name is Michelle Jackson. I run a blog and podcast, both called Michelle is Money Hungry. I really got into personal finance after just a lifetime of just horrible things with money happening. Like the list is so long, it's really tiring.
Oh, Michelle.
That was noted. Yeah.
You
can tell that. I know. It's a little slow, but what I also got attracted to this topic was how I saw my mom's mind as well as what I was seeing in my family. So I was like, I need to hop on this because there are things that we need to talk about. I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm not a millennial, so I'm in that middle, and I think that there's some things that people need to consider, especially the younger that you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Thanks, Michelle. Valencia, let's hear your introduction.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Thank you. I'm trying to be on trend, on theme, Black-owned business. Well, I'm Valencia Morton. I am a wealth strategist from MillionairessMama.com. I am a debt-free money coach, and I help moms in particular, like myself, single moms especially, to get debt-free through budgeting and developing side hustles, hopefully into profitable businesses. And also, I was drawn into this topic myself. I live in the DMV area, right in the capital pretty much, where I see these changes directly happening from the government. From the shutdown to people being moved out of their homes by corporations and wealthier people. So I directly see this like on the daily. So for me, it was super important to have a discussion about wealth. And two, I'm a mother of a mixed child who is half white, and it's very, it's a dialogue. It needs to happen as a dialogue for all of us as raising more multicultural children. We need to have these talks to educate them on their history to help them get through their future as well. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Valencia. And I'm super excited to introduce to you all Teri Ijeoma. Teri has come on board the Black Girl Fin Magic team. She is our director of local chapters. Yay! So if you're interested in starting a Black Girl Fin Magic chapter in your area, Teri is the go-to person. She hosted our chapter meeting here in Dallas, and it was so, oh my gosh, so exciting. And the feedback that we got is that everyone was really excited. They were like, why can't we do this more often? Like all the time. We're like, this is just our first one. You're so welcome, Teri. So not to steal any more of your thunder, go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience tonight.
So hello, thank you so much, Brandy. That was a great introduction. My name is Teri Ijeoma, and I teach people how to invest in the stock market. And not just investing for the long term, but my goal was I need daily income so that I could quit my job and start traveling around the world. And I was able to actually do that. I started with, okay, let me just make $100 a day. Now let me make $200 a day. And when I finally got to 300, I was like, peace out, school. I was a principal at an assistant principal. I was like, peace out, y'all. I'm about to go and travel around the world and just trade and travel. So that's what I teach people how to do now. Like, how do you make regular income from trading so that you can go pursue your passions? Love it. Love it. But I'm also really excited about this topic because I grew up in a household with 3 generations. So it was me, my mom, who was a single mom, and my grandmother. And like, that's just how I was raised. But like, I'm single right now. I don't have any kids, but I can tell you honestly, my grandmother passed away last year, but we don't have a lot of money to send to if I had kids, that 3rd generation. So I want to start this dialogue so like we can understand, like, how do we make our money last through the generations? So I'm excited to talk about this today.
Awesome. Thanks, Teri. And for those of you who are kind of new and just joining us, I'm Brandy Baxter. I'm one of the co-founders of Black Girl Fin Magic. And I want to clarify that. Most people will always say, oh, Brandy's the founder, but really the idea started with me and Sandra Davis. And then I had a team of ladies who came on board to kind of help move the vision forward. And then here lately, Teri and Tina have become my go-to team. And so I just want to always give credit where credit is due. I do not do any of this on my own. It takes a team to make it happen. So I have no problem saying I'm a co-founder, even though the vision kind of started with me, but I definitely am okay with sharing the wealth. That being said, I'm the owner of Living Abundantly, a cash flow management company where I teach people how to manage their cash flow so that they can have more disposable income to do a lot of the things that we're going to talk about tonight as far as building wealth and preparing for future generations. Yeah, so I think that's good. So enough about me. So thank you to our audience who you've given up your Wednesday night to join us to talk about this topic. So our first question coming from the chat group is, what do you ladies see as the biggest barriers to building generational wealth? We've kind of talked a little bit about our personal stories. Well, you all have, I haven't shared mine, but you talked a little bit about your personal stories. When it comes to women, women of color, women who are business owners as well, what do you see as some of the biggest barriers? And we'll go ahead and start with you, Michelle.
Well, and by the way, I can tell my connection is a little, we have a snowstorm here, so just bear with me. But I think
you're good.
I think one of the biggest barriers is just knowledge about money and then money mindset. I've found that with me, I've had to work every single day on money mindset. It really surprised me. I'm a personal finance blogger. I've been paying off debt. I've been doing all these things very aggressively and actively, but telling yourself that you deserve what you're saying you want to bring into your life is very different than taking the actions to have it. Do you know what I mean? Like believing in your heart and your soul that, you know what, I have the right to demand this from the universe and command it and take the actions is very different than taking the action. So just the mindset behind creating wealth and actually a key thing that I would point out is Black women are creating businesses at a rate of like 300% to other groups in the United States, but what we earn in our businesses are like $30,000.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So you can really see that money mindset issue just in our earnings.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll step out, but then we don't step out further with making the money. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like where I'm like, ugh.
No, that's a fantastic point, because Tina Marie Wilkin, who's one of the Black Girl Fin Magic directors, she does a lot of work on money mindset, and she and I often talk about that. How your mindset, those limiting beliefs, they will hinder you from so many amazing things that are waiting and available for you. A lot of times, you know, even when we're just having everyday conversation, she'll catch me and say, no, Brandy, don't say that. You know, change that to a positive, because you want to attract positive things to you. So you're so right, Michelle, that money mindset definitely has an impact, and it is a barrier that bothers us. Go ahead, tell us what your bracelet says.
And the bracelet actually is something that I got this year to remind me of that. So one of the discs says love, the other says money, not the love of money, but that I deserve love and that I deserve money. And if I forget, if I feel like I'm slipping, if I feel like there's some confusion about that, I can look and see and remind myself of that.
Yeah, perfect. I love it. Good. Thank you, Michelle. All right, Valencia, let's hear your thoughts on some of the barriers to generational wealth.
I think definitely mindset as well. That's a huge thing I discuss as well with my ladies. Mindset is just everything. Money does not matter. It's your mind, because you can always make buckets of money, but if your mind is in that poverty mindset still, it'll go out of your hand like water. So the mindset is more important than you sitting here making money or having more hustles or anything like that. And also, you have to want more for yourself. A lot of us are probably the outliers in our family. Like, the ones kind of always a little bit off, always kind of thought differently, because you have to want more for you and for your family, your legacy, your future. So I think in the mindset realm, thinking outside of your normal box, getting around different people, leaving your normal cliques, those are barriers, I think as well. Having kind of the same clique of people throughout your entire life and not really growing with new people, networking and changing. We have to be more open to different ideas, different cultures, and expanding our mind more globally. If we were thinking more globally, we are going to be turning a profit in our businesses better. A lot of us don't do what our white counterparts do. Like they hire employees. We're often one-woman shows. They often partner with the government and nonprofits and go across the aisle to other people, in the government. And they, look for champions who don't look like them, but will help them. So we have to kind of think we must band together, but also think about other people that can help us as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a fantastic point when you talked about, just working with different people and not being a one-person show. I was on a webinar with Letitia Stiles recently, and she said the same thing. And she was like, you need to hire help. Like, stop trying to do everything yourself. And I know for me, when I was trying to do Black Girl Fin Magic all by myself, I would have team meetings and the ladies would show up and they were like, yay, we're ready to help you. And then I would always kind of overtask myself, like, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do this, I'll do that. And we did not gain any momentum. It wasn't until I said, you know what? There are more of us and we're stronger together, and let me allow other people to do some of this work, that we really started gaining a lot of momentum. And I know that the same thing will happen in our businesses. I think like Michelle was saying, sometimes that mindset of I'm not, who am I? I often sometimes battle with, who am I to think that I'm to employ someone? And when, like you said, Valencia, we're the outliers in our family. No one in my family own their own business, goodness gracious, let alone 2 or 3 businesses. And so you're constantly fighting against the environment that you're around. And I love your point. Change the environment, change the people that you're hanging out with, change the people that you're receiving advice from, because they will also, your environment, your circle of friends, they will influence your mindset. And so that was a really great point. All right, Teri, you're up. Share with us some of the generational barriers that you think kind of hinder us from generating wealth. And we don't have any volume from you right now.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, there you go. Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
So I wanted to touch on this point of mindsets too, but from the perspective of, I've heard some people say, well, I don't want to leave them anything because I had to work hard for this money. So they don't, like they need to work hard too. And there's this mentality in the Black community, especially. I can't speak to other communities because I don't know them as well. But there's this mentality that like being poor, and this is a blanket statement, so it may not be completely true, but I've seen that there's this like mentality that if you're poor and you're more humble, then you have more honor. So like the teacher is praised, even though the teacher doesn't make a lot, but they're making a big impact. The person who works in social work is praised in our communities. They don't make a big income, but they have a big impact. And I know part of it, of course, is because we're building up treasures in heaven. So like it is to be praised when you are going after like helping people and building up God's kingdom. That's definitely good work. And I can say that from like, I used to be in ministry and nonprofit and education, everything that didn't pay a good salary, but was good to do. And sometimes, and I've even talked to some of my students, like she was like, you know what, Teri, like I was hesitant to take your class because I didn't trust myself if I made a lot of money.
Wow.
And then there was also this thing of like, I have this sum of money that I've received, but I just like, I don't know, there's just this negative stigma with being wealthy. And then we don't want to pass that stigma on to our kids because we feel like then they'll feel entitled. They won't have a good
hear anybody. Is Teri still speaking?
She is.
Oh, I totally can't hear her. That's so weird.
Oh no! Can you hear me now?
That might be your connection, Michelle, because I can still hear her fine.
Okay, I'm gonna refresh my connection. So if I cut out, that's what's going on.
Okay.
Go ahead, Teri.
So I think that part of mindset is also something we have to address. That there's also grace and greatness in being wealthy. Like Samuel was a very wealthy man, but he was a very godly man. The women, there's business women that took care of Jesus in ministry. And I know everybody's not religious, so I apologize if I'm like, upsetting someone, but I think we just need to start helping our communities understand that wealth is not a bad thing. And that it's and it's one of those things that's like a twofold. Like everybody kind of knows that it's good to pass on wealth, but then at the same time, when you talk to them more in depth, they feel like, oh, well, my kid won't know how to work hard if I give him all this money. So that's something that I've noticed.
Teri, it's so interesting that you brought that up, just the notion of being of service, and that because you're of service, it's wrong to ask for wealth. And one of the things that I've noticed, and it's been quite frustrating actually for me, is that my mom has that very ingrained in her. So she's done a lot of jobs. She's very, very well educated, but she's ended up underutilizing her skills and being in these jobs that have nothing to do with all the education she has. It's the most frustrating thing I've ever observed. I'm not the only person who's observed that in people that they love. I'm like, you've learned Chinese. Like, what is going on? Like, I'm serious. My mom learned Chinese last year.
Wow.
She's very smart. So it's very frustrating for me when I'm like, why are you doing this job? Like, this job does not match what you can do. And so for people who are especially in their 20s to, I would say, to be honest, 20s to like mid 50s, like that range, because people are living longer, really push yourself to think about, if you're doing a job of service, what else can you do to build wealth? Some of the richest people in the world are teachers. The millionaire next door, those people are teachers. I don't want to be waiting 30 years to get rich like that, though, because I don't have time for that. But you guys, I'm a digital entrepreneur for a reason. I don't have energy like that. But my point is, teachers have been documented to become wealthy because of what they know, and they're of service. They're doing all the things. By the way, I'm in Denver, Colorado. So a lot of the examples that you guys are giving, I actually have the complete different life experience. So where you're talking about Black communities and things like that, I've lived in a white community. so like for Black people living in a white community, we just have to do our thing, or else we're going to wait forever. And so it's just it's interesting sometimes being on panels like this. I'm like, I don't know. I've observed it in my family and in travels, but like my own experience. So if you're like, Michelle, I don't know where you're coming from with that, that's partly why. So just, sorry.
Well, thanks for clarifying, Michelle.
I'm like, in case you're like, what? She's left. That's what's going on.
No, she'll be back in a minute, but I wanted to touch on this.
Your authentic self.
Hey,
that's why we have so many different people in the panels. Is we all have different backgrounds, different experiences, and we can bring that here. But I love how you all touched about mindset. And I just recently, I'm almost finished with Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. In the beginning of the book, she talked about how one of her grandfathers was really bitter and always angry until she learned like his history. He was super smart, but couldn't get a job in a union and always had to take these odd jobs. So he could never fulfill his potential. And so his anger kind of spilled into the next generation. And the next generation kind of had to figure out, which was her parents' generation. Her parents' generation wanted more for her. So her parents really pushed education on her brother and them, but they end up getting into careers that didn't really fulfill purpose. So I would love to hear your guys' thoughts about how our grandparents' experiences and before that kind of shaped each generation moving forward, and how you guys are kind of changing it for the next generation.
Valencia, you go with that. You start. Because my story is deep, so you gotta go first.
Okay. Well, personally, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, but like my mom's generation kind of became the government workers. So I kind of didn't see that directly, but my like they were entrepreneurs. But kind of what happened that I saw is we moved away from entrepreneurship to the DMV area, because it's all government here, to government jobs, where it became, you now follow the directions of the government, and 9-to-5 jobs became the safe jobs. And so people like me coming into that, wanting to be an entrepreneur, they don't understand. My family very much so fought me. What, 9-to-5 job? You get a 401k? Okay. Like, how long do I can retire, and leave it and then do my own thing, right? So, and now, and also the entrepreneurs had money and they left property and land, but the generation in between didn't know what to do with it because they're worker bees and they lost it, or they didn't appreciate it, let it go to waste. So now for me, I got my first property actually a couple of weeks ago, this plot of land, a good sized land down south. Thank you. And it's for my daughter. It's for her daughters. But generation in between, they don't get that. Why would you want land? Because land is power more than anything. You taking up space, but as an African-American woman, person, taking up space in the US, that is power. And I want to teach my daughter that. I learned something, some article I read a while ago about how when you're a mother, you actually hold all the generations in you. When you are holding your child, you're holding your daughter in you. She's holding her daughter inside of her. And if we all kind of thought legacy wise like that, generationally like that, we would probably be acting different, you know? And so for me, it was super important to get that. I don't want to be South Carolina. I'm a city girl, y'all. I am not built for the South, okay? But the land's a good price down there, and I know, we'll flourish and do well down there. I'm not built for it, but I'm going to do it and do it well for the legacy. to build and to, and I plan to buy out the block. I plan to wait out the houses around me, say, can I buy you? Buy that house, and just buy up land, take up stock, for all of us, so yeah, that's answer the question.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Valencia. That's perfect. And I want to touch back on something I saw in the chat a moment ago. Kendra was saying how when Teri was talking about being poor and having a service type jobs and thinking that was honorable and the only way to go, Kendra said it was almost as if we, how did she word it? As if the struggle is a debt that we have to pay, as if we owe it. Like, oh, we can't inherit anything because then we haven't earned it. And that's not the way other cultures think. And so I love what you're saying, Valencia. Changing it for the next generation starts with your mindset changing and thinking about, okay, what's in the future for my family? Kendra Barnes, excuse me, her and her team of folks, I've been following them on Instagram. They're all doing the buy up the block, right? And I am so loving that. I was telling my husband, I was like, okay, we thought we had did something when we bought our home. And I always tell my daughters, this is your home. Like, I don't care what happens. You're not allowed to sell this house. I don't care what the market is doing. This is the investment for our family. But since I've been following Kendra and her gang, I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to buy a whole bunch of property. And you're right, that's where our power, that's when we really begin closing this deficit for the future generations. You'll hear people talk about the wealth gap, right? And that's comparing what white America has to what Black America has. And in most cases, that's a very unreal and unfair comparison because they have history, hundreds of years, generations of years ahead of us. And so that's why I was very intentional on calling this the generational wealth deficit. Let's start where we are, right? Let's start with what we can change. And that's those things that you're talking about, Valencia, thinking about our granddaughters, future generations, and realizing that we can make a difference right now today and make a change.
But so I'm going to push back on something. I'm going to say something. So
sure.
We were talking about jobs and things. We were kind of touching on jobs and stuff like that. And one of the things that I noticed that we aren't doing as well is being aggressive about earning more. And I'm not saying just in business, like as entrepreneurs. I'm saying if we're going into a 9-to-5 type job, like all of my friends who are Asian, they're all doctors. Like they're either doctors or slackers. There's no in between. It's either the doctors or the ones who disappoint the family. You know what I mean? And it's very interesting how reluctant I think many of us are to make decisions like this will get me eating a lot of food and traveling and taking care of stuff. Like,
okay, Michelle, we lost you a little bit. You're making a fantastic point. Go ahead, Teri, jump in.
Can I actually add to Michelle's point there? I think one of the things she was just saying is like how we should be aggressive on like making more income. And I actually want to bring it back to Tina's point from before. So in my family, we had entrepreneurial spirits, but all of my family, all the women in my family had kids really young. So like I'm the first girl who didn't have a kid by the age of 21. And so like it's the idea and the mindset is like, yes, let's hustle. But then as soon as you have that kid, it's like, oh, wait, I got to just do what I need to do to provide for this child. And so then it stops. We don't have the extra income to give to our kid, even if we want to. So I've seen that play a part in the family. And so now to Michelle's point, like, I don't have any kids yet, but my whole mindset is even if a kid comes in, I want to have that extra income or like some other side hustle so that I'll be able to do more than just provide in the moment.
I need cash money to be having kids, guys. I mean, I have to help my mom out. Like, I'm going to be very clear because I keep getting cut out because Be Live does this to me. Be Live, this is why I do Zoom. Be Live hates me. But the point is the amount of money that we are earning versus the amount of money that we really probably need, there's a huge chasm between the two. There's an actual recent article about that because I pay Black tax. I already know that I'm supporting my mom for her retirement. I already know this. Like I said, I'm Gen X. I have a number of friends with small children who've already helped parents out. I was just I was interviewed in November for a national news thing that I can't announce what it is because it still hasn't gone live. Okay. The woman who interviewed me was Latina. She had the same thing. She goes off camera. She goes, you know what? I remember the first time my mom asked me for money, and she was the one doing the interview.
Wow.
So the amount of money and so it's a national show, so it's like kind of, she's making good money, but the amount of money, like I really want to talk about how we can get people to earn more, because the amount of money that we really need versus what we're earning, there is a gap, and no one's really aggressively talking about that. Grant Sabatier, who is a guy in the FinCon community that a lot of us are in, he just released a book talking about his journey with finances. He's a white dude, but he makes a very valid point, which is really at the end of the day, you can't out frugal what your responsibilities are, what's going to happen, what's going to come up. You just can't. How do I know? Because I'm frugal. Okay. I'm a frugal girl. And there's just a point, like my expenses are low. I live a really nice lifestyle. Don't worry. But I do. But my point is there's only so frugal you can be. Right. So I really, I get frustrated because I'm like, where's our money? We need to talk about that. And I just got really worked up. Sorry, guys. Sorry, ladies.
No, it's totally okay. and to your point, though, Michelle, actually, there are lots of people talking about this gender and the racial wealth gap, which is kind of what they're known in the academic arena. Unfortunately, a lot of that is taking place as academic conversations, where most of us are not spending our time. I just happen to be an academic, so that's where I spend a little bit of my time. But the reality is there's like a day that's almost a year after a man's wage is called the gender pay day, where this is the day that a woman's income has equaled to what a man has earned from the previous year. And then when you factor in race, like Black women, it's almost a year and a half later for when our pay has equaled that of men. And so you bring up a really good point, and which is why when I work with my clients, I don't focus on what can you cut out. I'm kind of like Valencia. What can you add in? Because that's unlimited. You know, your ability to reduce your expenses is very, very limited, but your earning potential is unlimited. And I think that's one of the things that, kind of like you were saying too, Michelle, the generations before us, my mom, nothing entrepreneurial about her. Whereas my grandparents were very entrepreneurial. And so you kind of wonder what in the heck happened to that middle group of people.
Yes.
And I don't know, I kind of like what Valencia said, maybe they got those safe government jobs and they just dialed down that entrepreneurial spirit. And so now I'm looking, and I remember seeing my grandparents do amazing things and providing and having a life that was very different than my mom. And so now I'm battling with that, like the mindset of it's in you, Brandy, you can do it. But then my most recent experience is like, no, play it safe. So I think those are some very profound barriers that not just Black women, but minority cultures deal with, because something happened to the generation of maybe the 50s and the 60s. Something happened right there, and they just kind of put it on pause.
And let's be clear, the government is not safe. They just made slavery out of the workers for the last month. Yeah. I'm sorry. I've got like financial PTSD watching that. Okay. They made those people go to work and did not pay them.
Right.
So if you think that your government job is safe after this is the third time and this is the worst time and honestly, it does not. I have no belief that it's going to get any better because of the personalities involved. I'm not going to get into politics. I'm just saying personalities. So if you're working these jobs and you're like, well, they're so secure. No, they're not. They made you be a slave for a month. You walk outside your door and it costs money. It costs money to commute. It costs money to buy groceries. It costs money. These people incurred expenses as a result of not getting paid to do a thing, and they had to show up for free. So please, I
And
want us
then
to stop
one of
saying
the-
that too. It's not secure.
But to be fair though, I come from a family of government workers. My mom's been in the government. She was 16 years old.
I did immigration work. I did.
Yeah. And so government work here in the DMV, like that's our bread and butter here. Everyone's like a government worker or a contractor.
No one
and
got
frankly,
paid for
frankly, it was the safe job for decades. You know,
Yes.
you knew people are here to government jobs and very much so overpaid. And they know it. They go to work, they do minimum work. And, you know, people in nonprofits work super hard. They know they go in and get overpaid. My mom knew. So now she goes back to work and she's like happy to go back because she knows that, you know, it was the safe job for decades. I think people want to be normal. And so they followed the trend of being an entrepreneur for our grandparents. Then it became the norm to get 9 to 5. People don't want to be the outlet. They don't want to be different. They want to do what their friends are doing. You know,
but
and
our
that
grandparents
mindset,
were entrepreneurs,
you know,
because there was no loans, there were no the credit cards. The credit card drop happened in 1955, I believe. So there was a lot of this money that we have access to that we can borrow that our grandparents could not borrow. My great grandparents were like crazy enough. I have great grandparents. My relatives are all from the Mississippi Delta area. Okay. They literally were on a plantation. My mom remembers going to the plantation and playing in the fields, and my great grandfather, whatever, was like a foreman, and people would come and pay him in chickens and money and stuff like that. They had to hustle because they borrowed money. And so I think the key to part of why we're confused is that borrowed money, a lot of that stuff that people have access to now that our great grandparents did not have access to before, you know?
Absolutely.
But we're not handling the borrowed money well.
Shaniqua asked a question about, she said, I thought the government workers got their back pay.
Not the ones, not the
They,
cleaners, not the people making $400 or $500 a week.
They had to go in, yeah.
But the contractors did not get paid.
They didn't get paid.
Contractors did not receive their pay. But
And
the
now
ones that work for the government, they'll get a lump sum check. But what's really disappointing though is when people in the high up in the political spheres are like, oh, but they can go get a loan while this government is like on hold. They will have to pay fees on all of that money that they would have got a loan for. So that is an interesting.
That was atrocious. Yeah, when I heard that was atrocious. Yeah.
But I will
this
say
also goes. Sorry, go ahead, Terry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, on this point though, of like our parents were more stable, but our grandparents were entrepreneurs. I actually feel like some of that though was the mindset of the grandparents. They had worked so hard, they pushed their kids to have those stable jobs. Like, you wanted to have a job where you could be on it 30 years and get a pension. Like that was a good thing. So while we're looking at it kind of negatively, like, oh, she just had this stable job, I feel like our grandparents were excited when their kids got these stable jobs. And like that was the norm, because they couldn't do that in the past. So I feel like we're projecting our feelings on like that generation when it might have been their parents telling them to get into those normal jobs.
Yeah,
but I do think
an excellent point, Terry.
But I think in 2019 though, it's not even about any of that. The reality is there are a couple of things we're not talking about. The first thing is automation. Automation is affecting jobs at a rate that our old president does not seem to be able to communicate or share with people. And it's a big deal because that's affecting how we're able to make money, right? So there are so I used to do immigration for 10 years at a university as a higher level administrator. Even my job where I'm doing immigration, there were large components of it that they were actually transferring so that it would be automated, and that students, overseas nationals, would be doing things overseas, and there were tasks that technically you wouldn't want them to do, but that it would be computerized. Okay. Wow. So the conversation that we're not having, and I don't mean us, but like just in general, like as a national discourse, is what are people going to do as their jobs get changed because of automation? And that's a very That to me, honestly, is the biggest threat to most people's jobs. Honestly, is automation, because a human costs a lot of money. They get sick, they have issues, they have kids, they cost a lot of money. A robot does not.
Right.
Wow. And there's just,
so I think, Michelle, you just set us up for like our next conversation. The whole automation thing. I'm sitting here like, whoa, mind blown.
I think too much about stuff.
No, that's good, because that's one of the things Tina and I have been talking about. While we appreciate and we value helping women develop their businesses and growing them and being able to promote them, we also don't want to do these things in a silo, right? We don't want to be ignorant to what's happening around us in our world, so that we think that it's all happily ever after because I've got my business and it's growing, but we are oblivious to the other effects. And so, no, you're spot on. It's just that tonight's conversation, we really want to look at some of those generational things, kind of from our yesteryears, our parents, those things that are even maybe today, some generational decision. I know in the read ahead, we talked about the effect of redlining and housing discrimination, and how some of those things have, created barriers to wealth generation for our communities. Does anyone want to talk about that?
Well, it's definitely happening here. Like I said, I think being so close to the nation's capital, I definitely see this a lot. Gentrification is a huge thing. It really started to happen, I think, hardcore in the 70s, mainly like in the Boston, San Fran, Seattle area. And it's really taken over here now, where wealthy people, companies are coming in and improving the neighborhood and doing renovations, and people of low income are getting pushed out. And they're getting pushed out into Maryland. And in Maryland, you need a car. In DC, you don't. You can get around wherever you need to go to. So imagine pushing you out of your home, away from your jobs. Maryland is not very commuter friendly. So now you're losing your jobs, you're being late. And then the people that are still stuck there are having new neighbors that have money coming in and calling the cops on them when they are loitering or when they're being too loud and celebrating. And then the cops are now honing in on people in the neighborhood who are from the neighborhood and harassing them. So I mean, it's like a whole cycle when housing becomes an issue in these major cities, especially I'm seeing.
Gentrification is one of those topics where I truly have an internal struggle, because as someone who wants to invest in real estate, I get really excited when Caucasians are in my neighborhoods. And I'm like, oh man, the property of my house just rose. But on the flip side, I also feel, and I'm being vulnerable with y'all, this is like the true honest struggle. On the flip side, I feel really bad for that elderly lady who's had her house 50 years, but now the property taxes have gone up and she can't pay the mortgage anymore. So like she's gonna like lose this property because she can't afford it. So gentrification is definitely one of those things where I come back to that struggle of, well, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? There's no way to stop it, so you just got to go with the flow. But that is one of those two-sided stories.
So I kind of think that when we look at what others are doing, we talked a little bit ago about buying back the block, right? I think you can actually improve neighborhoods without destroying the community. And for me, that's where gentrification becomes a negative, because you are not having respect for the existing community. You, like you said, you say you're going to improve, but what you're doing is you're abolishing everything that is reminiscent of a previous community to erect a brand new community. And I know a gentleman here locally in the Dallas area who saw this happening to his neighborhood, and he said, you know what? He gathered some investors, and they're people that care about the neighborhood. And so they bought up the homes, they bought out the property taxes when the grandmothers couldn't afford them anymore, and there were no kids around to help support. And they invested in their community for themselves, so that there weren't people coming in and building high rises, but they really, improved the genuine essence of improving their communities. So I think if we look at gentrification from an actual caring about the community and the culture that's present versus those that come in and abolish, it can actually be a positive thing.
But what about when the community needs to be improved? Like I know you want to improve it and keep the culture of the community, but high rises actually do help. And there's some I'm thinking about Chicago. Like I came from living in Chicago for 7 years. There's some public housing developments that are in prime locations right on the lake in Bronzeville and like close to the loop. And I really do feel like they could be used better than just in public housing. So what do you do when you have I want to keep the community, but there's better ways to use that. And I don't know if it's necessarily keeping the community.
But you don't displace people they're displacing communities, families. You build community centers. You make sure you're funneling in better teachers, build up the schools. Your school shouldn't be shut down because you can't, the AC conked out again, or whatever. Build up the community around. You can still build up the places, but have more Section 8 housing within the building. There's no need to they're knocking out people out of whole cities. And that's a problem for that. It messes up their whole life. You think you're behind in your poverty now. Let me move you out of the poverty you're into, even more poverty that you're not familiar with,
And let me also say too, Teri, I'm not talking about leaving the eyesores. I'm not talking about leaving, the little corner bars and things like that. When I say community, I'm saying exactly what Valencia is saying. If you're going to come in and build housing, make it affordable. Here in the Dallas area, my stepson and his wife were looking for a 2-bedroom apartment. And I kid you not, a 2-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood was exactly what I was paying for my mortgage. And I only bought our house 4 years ago. So it's not like we got this super low mortgage, but the cost of living was astronomical because developers are coming in, they're building these high rises, and they can get away with it because there's no oversight requiring them to improve the neighborhood, but still keep it affordable and preserve the community that's there.
I think the other thing to ask yourself is what's affordable. So I've been to 45 states. I've traveled a lot. I've been overseas, I've done a lot of travel. And one of the things that we don't talk about often enough is that in general, inflation is always happening. It's always occurring every year. No matter what you do, the cost of living is going up every year, right? And I live in Denver. I grew up in Boulder in Denver. So Boulder's a city outside of Denver as well. The entire city of Denver basically gentrified. I don't know how else to explain it. Okay. So, to put it in perspective, Denver is not the blackest city in the country. So, just keeping it real. Okay. However, there was a neighborhood that was known as the Black neighborhood, and there was a red line, obviously, because it's America. So it was a red line. And that neighborhood is one of the most coveted neighborhoods in the city, period, end of story. The neighborhood that I live in, which I won't say what it is, it's one of the best in the city. And before it was the neighborhood that it is now, 30 years ago, which a lot of people don't know, it used to be the Mexican neighborhood. And they gentrified the neighborhood and people came in, they bought the homes, and there's one family that's a holdout on my block. I guess my point is, one, what's affordable? Because if we look at today versus 1990, that you know what I mean? The cost has changed. And two, you're talking about people coming in and investing in neighborhoods and things like that, but most of us need to invest in ourselves. Do we even have to better our own personal situation? So if I could go into neighborhoods and invest in them and purchase.
I think we lost her. Well, I wanted to add, we'll wait until Michelle can jump back in. I wanted to add to what Michelle said, and I think everyone agrees that.
And we'll start with mine.
Okay.
Oh, Be Live and hate me.
I think we all can agree that some of these poor neighborhoods can be improved. That's what we want to see. And gentrification, I think we have a big problem with it. It's just we have this outside community coming in and kind of taking over and making it to what they want it to be. And to add to what Teri's saying is, you know, I've seen historically the Jewish community really pours back into their own community. Hispanic community really pours back into their own community. Even the Hispanic Latino communities pouring back into their own community. So what are we not doing, and why are we not pouring back into our community? I know there's many of us that are doing that already, but what kind of precedents or mindset do we need to set within our own community to be able to reinvest in our own community? That means maybe loaning to our own people so that we can open up more businesses. What are we doing to help improve housing? Are we giving jobs to more constructions to people in our own community in order to help build? So these are kind of the ideas that I think we should be really talking about, is why aren't we having that ingrained in our mindset, in our culture, in our own community as much as all these other communities are doing? Anybody has thoughts on that?
You know, I've actually been really proud of like the people in the FinCon community. Actually, I feel like we are doing this. We're pouring into our communities, like just by all the financial education that we've been giving everyone. I've seen investment clubs where they're pooling money together. I've seen people pooling money together for both houses and stock investments. So I feel like we're actually working towards that goal. It is a mindset shift, but there's like this underground rumbling that's slowly shifting the narrative.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Teri. In fact, I just saw a friend of mine, Sam, she posted on her Facebook a day or so ago that she just invested in her first property as an investor. So not like purchasing a home, but an actual investment property. I believe it's a commercial property. And so you're right, Teri, the more this generation, the more of us that become aware of what's happening. And for folks like us who are in the financial services community, the more we talk about it and the more we educate our clients, I do see that there's a sort of underground railroad, if you will, beginning to take place because people are becoming more aware. You know, we're this woke generation and we're like, you know, we're not going to just sit by and let life happen to us anymore. So thank you. That's a great point.
I grew up in a very multicultural sphere. When I grew in my high school, we had a long hallway of all the flags of where everyone was from, and it was littered. So I grew up best friends being from South Korea, India, Sri Lanka, from Vietnam, all over the place. And what I learned with their cultures is they believed in family and communities together. In African-American communities, you're kind of independent. Everybody has to be independent. You got to be growing. You got to be doing your own thing. You can't rely on each other. You want to ask your mom for money? For what? Go out and get a job, you know? But they do pour back into, you know, one person wants to buy a house. We all help them buy a house. They want to have a shop somewhere. We all help them buy a shop. It is not that way in our community. It's very much so independent, but we're willing to commiserate in our poverty. You know, who can out commiserate? Who had the worst upbringing? Who was more poor? You know, who grew up in the worst area? You're cooler. You know, that's the cool thing. You know, but we don't want to, you know, buy into Black businesses. We don't, or we do. We ask for a discount. Girlfriend, give me a discount. You wouldn't go into Nike and do that. So I mean, we have to think. You know, we had a, you know what I'm saying?
Teri, like I would.
You know,
Well, the worst thing is when you're like a realtor and they're like, oh, so can you give me a percentage back? What? Who asked for their paycheck? Like, my paycheck. I did the work for you. What are you talking about? But I digress. So yes, we do. We ask for discounts all the time for everything.
so we have to be willing to really be okay. I remember, like, I live at home with my mom. And when I tell people, my friends who are of those cultures, like, cool, good for you. You should be, you'll be able to help. I tell a Black person that, girl, you ain't grown girl, with your mom. I'm sorry. I enjoy my mom. Look at this.
Like, I don't, this is why I'm like, I had to say, this is not, maybe because we don't have a lot of Black people here. So we don't do that. Like, we're like, let's like hang, let's go hang. Like it just is. It's been a different experience. That's all
right.
My relatives have shared this because I have relatives in Central Illinois, Chicago, Indianapolis. Like, it's not like I'm completely oblivious. But I am thankful to say I have had none of these experiences. I don't give discounts either. Just saying. So, nope. I don't feel bad about it either.
Yeah, no, and now that I have my own property, people are saying, oh, good for you. Now you're doing the grown-up thing. But no, being at home with my mom, I was able to get debt-free. Well, that and 11 side hustles. But I was able to get debt-free, and you're sitting out here in debt because you want to be Miss Independent and be able to say you have your own place. We got to do what makes sense. We can't get caught up in this me mentality. It's not helping you or your legacy out. We have to get more, thinking we're a collective together. We all do this. Fin community, we all do this. But outside of this, the people we know, the friends we know that we grew up with, they don't do that. Unfortunately.
Mine do.
Well, your people do. Your people do, and my friends from other cultures do. But not no Black friends of mine.
No, I don't have time for that. All my Black friends are this no, we are, and this goes back to who you deal with, right?
Yes.
So I don't, obviously living here, I don't have just Black friends because that'd be really hard. But all my friends who are Vietnamese American, my hippie white people, everyone's pretty chill. They want you to win. And it's very interesting to hear what people's feedback is about what I'm doing, what have you. And if it's negative, if it's been negative, they're gone. Mm-hmm. So I think that might be the other conversation, is that there are people who have to leave you because you are operating at a different sphere. So if you're dealing with people who are saying these kind of comments, they are blocking your chi, in my view.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
They're blocking your chi. I don't have time for that.
And that goes back to what you were saying earlier, Valencia, changing your circle. I know for me, just even starting Black Girl Fin Magic and the women that I've connected with, it's been a different experience of being around supportive women, being around women who encourage, and like Michelle said, who want you to win. But I also have noticed that some of the people that I hang out with locally, it's also changing because I don't have the
you're
energy
at a higher vibration.
Exactly.
Wow.
And sorry for the hippie speak, but you know what I mean? You are operating from here.
You're good. You're good.
Right. I'm let's reel that in. Okay.
You deal with the people down here because
sorry.
you're up here.
But I also think that's why it's important to have a community of people where you can go and you can feel like you're part of it instead of an outlier, right? So we talked about at the beginning, Valencia. So instead of us trying to always bring everybody up, perhaps we change for generations by surrounding our kids with other people who are go-getters. We change the generational challenges by surrounding, our parents, even encouraging them to be in a different mix so that they can hear other people talking. I was telling a good friend of mine, as I was transitioning from, my full-time job to being an entrepreneur, I had to be around more entrepreneurs because the language was different. Mm-hmm. My 9-to-5 friends, that's their language. And so as long as I was speaking their language, that's the world I found myself drawn back to. But when I didn't want to be in that world anymore, I started hanging around entrepreneurs and their language drew me into them. And I was like, oh my God, these are my people. And so I think that's how we really can motivate change in our culture and for generations, is by changing the environment and changing who we're around and not being afraid to look outside of our own culture. I know this is Black Girl Fin Magic and I get that. I totally respect that. But as long as we stay siloed in just our community of color, we are missing out on a rainbow of people who can influence us. And I think, Michelle, you're a great testament to that.
I can't be successful. It will not, if it weren't for a lot of my white friends, my Asian friends, what have you, I would not know half of the things that I know. I wouldn't have had doors open that I do. Again, I live in a white city. So it's a very different experience than living in a Black town. It's just different, right? And so you have to know people in order to get into spaces. You just do.
Absolutely.
And and an example, actually, what drives me crazy, we'll go to FinCon. Hopefully everyone attends FinCon. Last year I took the year off because I've been to like 7 anyway. And the last time I went, it was Dallas, and I was like, why? And I noticed a lot of the personal finance influencers of color hanging out with one another. I'm like, what is your point of being here? Because the information that you need to know, you need to meet that dude right there who's making $1 million a month. And they're accessible to you and open to learning who you are, what you're doing, and mentoring you. They are here for that. How do I know? Because I'm in the space. And Tiffany Aliche, she's Black, but you go to FinCon, you meet her, she's not just hanging out with Black people. You know what I mean? Right. Like you have to understand who it's like when you go to an office and you're mean to the secretary and you never meet the CEO.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I always meet the CEO. Okay. So my point is you have to, when you go into these spaces, whatever doubts or whatever is going on in your head, like, again, I don't have that experience. I'm used to it. But whatever you have in your head, clear it out, meet the people that you need to meet, because it will change your life. It'll change your money. It'll change your trajectory. And especially in entrepreneurship, when you have downtimes, last year was really hard for me. But then I was able to learn different things, connect with different people, and up level as a result. You know what I mean? Not just what I was doing, but just how I thought about what I could do. You can't, and this was with both Black, white, Asian, whatever, Hispanic entrepreneurs. I couldn't just do it with just one type of entrepreneur. It was people who were trying to do like-minded things.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. In fact, I think last week we posted in the group, I think it was Jamila who gave an interview about how FinCon changed her life. And then Sharita Humphrey clicked on and typed how FinCon really changed, the trajectory of her business as well. So it's not like it can't be done. We've got great examples of women who have really utilized that experience. And you're right, Michelle, we've got to be able to connect with other people as well for our businesses to succeed. Now, that's not to say that we want y'all to disappear from Black Girlfriend Magic, because this is our community where we
you
come
can exist in more than one space.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
We still need our own space, but when it comes to making that money, go ahead and connect with other people.
Yeah. I was a newbie at FinCon. I was a newbie at FinCon this year. I'm brand new. I started Millionairess Mama actually last March. So I was like a newbie. And my first time going was this past year. And I grew up in a multicultural setting, but I went to like an all white, I'm used to like white music, white college, like, right. But when I went there, I was hanging out with everybody, but it was a lot of people like us talking about, it's a mindset thing. Well, we applied to speak, but we didn't get it. Well, instead of thinking maybe what you were coming with, they already had, or maybe they didn't like it. It was more of, it's because we're this color or things like that. And that kind of, if you want to be included, you have to be inclusive too. Yes. It can't just be one way. We want in, we want in. But what about, are you guys kind of sharing too? I'll say this too, the final party of FinCon, it was very much so everyone else dancing, having fun, a lot of us lying in the dance floor judging, okay? Instead of joining in and being a part. They won't see you if you don't want to be seen, if you don't try to be seen, and don't try to be like the Black person. Don't try to be like, you gotta, because I'm Black, put your value into it. And they won't even see what color you are. I feel, not all the time, but it to me as a newbie, that was so kind of off-putting to see. You have to try. You don't assume mindset-wise that people are already going to judge you because of the color of your skin. You're already going in backwards. You're going butt in at that point.
Right. Hey, ladies, I hate to hold on just a sec, Teri. So we're like right at our hour. Oh my gosh, can you believe it?
8:03.
We have gone an hour. So the question popped up and said, okay, do we want to go like 20 more minutes? It's up to you ladies, because we're on live, so they're going to pop in and out as they want to. But do you all want to go 20 more minutes or so?
I could do about 15. So and I'm starting to write my books again for the year. So I'm like in it.
Yes, I love it. And I love it that you're like, nope, not going to waste any more time. Perfect. Okay, what about you, Valencia?
I'm good.
15. Okay, Teri?
Let's do it.
Okay, everyone, we're going to go for 15 more minutes, and I'm going to watch the clock this time so we don't run out of time. Teri, you were getting ready to make a comment. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We were talking about FinCon.
Oh, I was just saying, I think one common thread of all the comments is just being intentional. Like that seems to be the word. Because even if like I live in a city in Dallas now, and it's not just a Black city, but you can make it a Black city by going to like an all Black church, by being in like especially as an entrepreneur, surrounding yourself by all Black people. But it's making it intentional to say, you know what, there's everybody here. I'm going to intentionally put myself into some areas where I meet other people. So it seemed like that's a common thread, even if you are in an all white city, just being intentional.
Yeah, you can't do that here.
What you
That's why I'm laughing. I'm like,
You're not in Colorado.
you can try, but there's always like a spouse, or you know what I mean. Like, they're always welcome. Okay, so
Well, I want to
there's
ask
always somebody's husband or wife.
I'm on the same wavelength as Michelle about law of attraction.
Just
So if you already have in your mindset that
keep going.
people are going to exclude you because you're Black, then you're going to attract that energy.
Exactly.
Right? You're going to attract those things. So like you said, Valencia and Teri, if you just go into it with an open mind and maybe think, okay, well, they rejected my idea, maybe I should ask them why. Do they already have it? You know, have they already done it a million times? Those kind of things. So I wanted to add about, you know, it is very much about, I believe a law of attraction is whatever you focus on, that's what you're going to attract more. And so,
and
go ahead.
And Tina, you make such a good point, but there's another piece to that, which is you can bring your own table and chair. And by what I mean is, if you are really feeling like you have got to cover this topic at whatever conference you are going to, that you've submitted to, maybe they've said no to it. No one said you couldn't do a meetup about it. No one said that you couldn't do a live stream about it. So I took last year off. I didn't travel. I focused on business stuff. I didn't go to any events. It was not a hardship because I love where I live, so it was fine. And I actually trend on Google's first page for FinCon. Do you know why? Because I'm really intentional about like sharing how to network there, what to do. And I literally, before FinCon, I'm trending and I'm like, hey, I'm not going to be at FinCon, but this is what you need to know. So people thought I was at FinCon, right? Because I knew I wasn't going to be there, but I was like, I need to have a presence. This is 2019. The way that you can show up in 2019 is very different than 1942. So the things that you can do to leverage your platform, to get people in front of what you're selling, to get people to connect with you, you don't have to just accept that, no, this place isn't going to take my panel suggestion. So what are you going to do about it? And I think that that's the other piece too, is life doesn't have to happen to you. You can happen to your life, right? So you don't have to accept that that's the final result. I know my friend Jason, he created Credit Con, which is the credit card conference. Like it's a mini conference right before FinCon. He was upset with a couple of things. I'm not going to get into it, but anyway, and he was just, for some reason, he just got upset about things, because this happens. Like you get disappointed about things professionally, whatever. And then one day he was like, you know what? I know all these people. Why don't I put this really useful tool together? Because he was also in charge of the freelancers marketplace at FinCon. So he was doing that. Instead, now he has this huge event that he makes all his money for, that's connected with with FinCon. He helps all these people out. He's built up his brand. So my point is, you don't have to accept the first no. You can change what's happening and do something different. You don't have to, you know what I mean? You can change how it exists for you. Boom.
Oh, absolutely. And that's how Black Girl from Magic even got started.
Boom.
okay, we don't see like a little meetup, so why don't we just do a meetup? It was just very impromptu. It ended up having 30 to 40 people show up in the Dallas FinCon, and now look where we're at.
Where was I?
I think you popped in a little bit, but I think the meetup happened right after Natural Nicole spoke. So I don't know where you went.
Oh, okay. I know too many people there, so I get distracted. Don't worry about that.
Oh, you could run around. I could not catch you.
When we're in DC, it's a whole nother level. So I'm going to lose my voice about the third day in. So just be prepared.
So we're coming towards our last 10 minutes, and Shantae Willis asked, I don't know if you all covered this, but what is everybody reading?
Ooh.
You know what? I started rereading The 4-Hour Work Week. I had picked it up a long time ago, but now that I'm actually in a job where I literally can work for 4 hours and then go do whatever I want to do, I figured I should reread the book.
Holla.
So that's what I'm starting now.
I read like several books at a time. So I'm one of those weirdos. So I was reading a young adult like fantasy book, and I'm rereading Launch because I'm launching some products and kind of refining my launch like how I'm doing that. I always read business books, like those are fun, and Becoming by Michelle Obama. So those are the ones that I'm working through. I read very fast, so I'll probably get done with that by the end of next week. Yeah.
So
I also reread books.
Can we reach out to you to find out how to launch then once you finish
No.
rereading that one?
Let me get the launch to happen, and then we'll have another conversation. Because I've launched this product before, but I want it to be a lot, like a big, real money.
Yeah.
So then, yes, after that happens. So that's the goal.
So for those of you who don't know, I'm actually a full-time student.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm in a strategic leadership program with an emphasis on leadership coaching.
Oh.
And so all the books that I read now are academic, although one of my goals is at the end of this year to pick up the Michelle Obama book, Becoming, because I'll have like 3 weeks off for winter break, and then I'll be able to really focus on that. So yeah, that's kind of not anything really exciting, but I mean, I enjoy it because I like being in school. So that's what I'm reading these days.
I like school.
Yeah. So poor Valencia, she got disconnected. I actually got disconnected too. It was the weirdest thing. But we're at about 9:11, so we've got about 4 or 5 more minutes. Why don't you ladies share kind of your big takeaway from our discussion tonight that you want our audience to think about?
I hate we didn't get into this, but I'm going to say it. I think that there are 2 things. One is focus on your income and growing your income. Period. End of story. I don't care what field you're in. Focus on your income. Secondly, focus on building up income outside of if you're in a 9-to-5, have a secondary source of income that you control completely. And no, I'm not necessarily talking a side hustle. I'm talking something that you're passionate about that you can sell and learn different skills, marketing and growing a business with that project. Because if something happens, like your government job doesn't pay you for a month, you can focus on that. Because I'm serious, that was a whole nother level for me. And then finally, believe that you can. Oh no, that's not the finally. Have my family's money is funny and I'm not laughing account. And I know that's horrible 51% of African-American women will find themselves helping family or friends. And I know a lot of women in the personal finance space who are Black, who are and Hispanic, who are in that situation. Many friends of mine who I talk to every day. Start putting that money aside, because if something happens, and 51% is a high likelihood that it will, then you can help that person out without it harming your finances. Because that's part of what happened with me. I was in a situation where my mom lost her job. I was in graduate school working at Starbucks. I had bad finances. I had bad habits. So obviously that was a bad situation. So now I strongly recommend that people don't tell your family though. Don't let them know all about my family is money account. Don't let them know about it. You just set that aside, because if something happens, that way you have peace of mind and it does not affect your finances. That's it.
I love that. Perfect. Thanks, Michelle. Teri?
I love that. That's actually one of the things I'm trying to do with my investing. Like a little portion of it can just go to an account that I don't touch. And I love that, Michelle. And then two takeaways for me are bring your own chair and table. I love that, Michelle, that you talked about. And that's something that I've been practicing. You guys probably saw my post in Black Girlfriend Magic. Like we made our own table.
That's right. That's right.
Whenever you have a seat at the table, make your own. And I love the fact that, like, if you get a no, you just decide, okay, how else can I reshape this to be able to make it happen anyway? It's the idea of not being a permission seeker, but just taking your own, like deciding for yourself, like, I'm going to do this. Because if you wait for permission, you'll be waiting forever. And then the last thing is, I love the idea of being intentional. I thought that was really great. I grew up in a really diverse area, but then I think as a grown-up, I've secluded myself to more people that look like me. So just that idea of being intentional to go outside of yourself was really powerful from today's conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, Teri. Unfortunately, we've lost Valencia. We've asked her
looks
to...
like we got Valencia back, so I'm going to let her pop in and her book and her
Uh-oh.
Valencia, if you're there, go ahead and give your closing comments. Yay, you're back.
Oh, okay. How are we giving those? I missed like the last 5 minutes.
No worries. Just share your takeaway from tonight's conversation that you want our audience to remember.
Yes, it was so great. I'm sorry I kind of conked out the last couple of minutes, but I think the good takeaways are to, I didn't hear the other ones were, but were to expand your circles. Definitely think outside of your normal box. There was this Seinfeld episode, you guys watch Seinfeld, where George was like doing the opposite. He was like, my life is miserable. I'm going to do the opposite of everything I normally do. And he had a great day. So if you have to just do the opposite, think the opposite to kind of trick your brain into doing new things, exploring new things, then try it. Like last year, when I started the business, I kept thinking, chase fear. If it's scary, do it. Okay. For me, I have a stutter. Okay. But I applied to speak at so many gigs this year, and I got this huge event at Mom 2. Am I scared out of my mind? Will I probably mess up? Maybe not. But it's all about doing what you don't normally do. It will expand your mind, and that's growth. You only grow when there's conflict, or if you learn through fear. I mean, so embrace the change, embrace when you are hit with challenges, and really try to think differently. If you want to be rich, get around some rich folk. Think how they think, bank where they bank, do what they do, So I just feel like really just changing your circle, changing your mindset will really help you a lot.
Awesome. Thank you. For me, I mean, this was an amazing conversation. Super excited. Tina and I could not wait for tonight. I think one of the takeaways for me, just for sake of time, I'll give one, was when Valencia said, when I hold my daughter, I'm holding my daughter's granddaughter. I mean, I have 2 girls, and that was just so powerful that tonight when I kiss them goodnight, I need to think about I'm kissing my daughter's granddaughters, this future generation. And to me, that really summed up what our conversation was about tonight. Despite the things that may have happened in the past, despite all of those things, we need to, like Michelle said, we need to increase our income at all costs. All right. Tina, do you have any closing comments?
No, I think this is a great conversation. And like Brandy said, we've been wanting to have something like this for the longest time and have these types of conversations. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. And if you're watching the replay, go ahead and drop in some comments to the discussion or any questions, because we would love to continue this conversation outside of this live. And we hope you join us next month for our next conversation. So stay tuned for that topic. All right. I'm going to sign off and thank you for joining us all.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Bye.